Living treasures. So they're going to tell each other stories. The Portalaires are going to sing for us. We have some fabulous cake and birthday candles, so we really will be celebrants. And we're going to have a wonderful time. And as we're eating our cake, you are not leaving your chairs. We're passing. We're going to serve completely. But as this is all transpiring, these two books are going to come around. One is to Jeanne, one is to Delane, and you are going to be able to write your love letters to them. Now, for however many people were here, it might be difficult to get all of us done. If we're not all finished, then there will be paper over at the library for a week, and we will be able to complete the story, and we'll also send out a message. Because this is their keepsakes, and we want as many signees as we can possibly get. So, it's kind of like a roast. So Delane is going to roast Jeanne, and Jeanne's going to roast Delane, as these dear friends have been together for years. And at some point when you're out and about later, be sure and check their picture boards and see what they have done. So Delane, I believe you're going to start with Jeanne because she's going to be 89. Our 890 is over there because Jeanne's 89 and Delane will be 90. And they're telling their story now. But who knows what the story will be next year. It'll just get better and better. So Delane, are you ready? And Jeanne? We'll tell Jeanne if she's ready to hear her story.
Jeanne and I did not tell each other what we're going to say. So we're going to each be surprised. I will tell you, 3 things have always awed me about Jeanne. First, her memory. Yesterday, I called her and said, you remember there was a man up at the research station, he was in charge. His wife's name was Emily. Oh yes, she said, that was Wade Sherbrooke. His wife was Emily. His children were named Skylar and... Okay, I don't remember. I really don't remember the other kid this morning. So, if you want to know something about the world, you go to Google. If you want to know something about Portal and environs and Arizona and the research Jeanne has done on her books, you go to Jeanne. That's number 1. Number 2, her grit. There has never been an obstacle in Jeanne's life, and there have been innumerable that she hasn't leaped over and kept going. If you have ever read her books and wondered who was the model, okay, and the third one is her compassion. Jeanne is a very compassionate person, first to dogs, and then to people. And if a disaster befalls you, Jeanne will be the first one on your doorstep with a dish built on tofu.
Delicious!
Hey, the Japanese are living to 100 on tofu. Just eat it and get well. I do know what I'm going to say, but I've got to have my cards to keep me from going off on a tangent that I'm prone to do. Okay. When Jeanne came here, I know she wanted to make Portal the kind of towns that are in her books. And they have a villa, 2 or 3 many oddballs and a lot of good people helping each other. And Jeanne worked to make this place like those towns. And I will show you some of the things she did to do it. Number one, I don't think you're aware that the first community birthday was Sally Spofford's 25 years ago. Jeanne said to me, Sally is going to be 80. Don't you think we should have a birthday party for her? Yeah, I did think that. So we arranged, Jeanne cooked the cake, and we arranged to have the birthday gathering at mail time in the library, because these buildings were here. This room wasn't here. And so that was the beginning of the birthdays. And every year we would have that poster and we'd put a new name on top of Sally. And we celebrated people's 80th birthday until we got 80. Then we said, well, that's not so old. And we so if you reached 80 and we didn't celebrate you, you're not old. Okay, what has Jeanne done to make our portal like her towns? And I'm going to give you a list. So what programs? When Jeanne came, we were still an extension club that was made for farm wives. Well, we are not farm wives, so we got ourselves out of that. And Jeanne said, well, we can do our own programs. Look at our talent. And she instigated the programs. And so what? Well, when the federal government instituted Title IX, it said a group could not discriminate by race, sex, religion, I don't know what else, to keep people out of a group. So Bob Chu came to us and said, okay, I'm ready to join, so what? And we said, Bob, Title IX has not gotten to Portal. You are not going to join, so what? Well, Jeanne said, oh, the poor men, they don't have anything. And she started the forums. She swears that wasn't true, but the proximity is circumstantial evidence. Okay. Scholarships. Someone else, Katie Scholes, had already mentioned scholarships, but nothing ever happened. And so Jeanne started the scholarship program. And we had 21 applicants this year. And we gave everybody something, but we're a little overwhelmed with the success of our program. Now, if you're sitting back there and you're thinking, Jeanne didn't do that, I did it. I want you to remember a talent Jeanne has. She'll have a bright idea. She'll get you to help her. And the first thing you know, the job is yours. And she has convinced you that you thought of it first when you know you did. Hikers. When Jeanne first came, the hiking group was embryonic, just getting started. And so she had hiked wherever she had lived before, and she was an enthusiastic hiker. So at first it was all women. Then the women began to let their grandsons hike with them. Well, that broke the sex barrier, and then men began to belong to the hiking group. And she even convinced me I was a hiker, which I was not. I was at the tag end of the group. But our favorites were when Alden Hayes used to lead the group. And he would have us bushwhacking out into nowhere, hunting a trail or a place that he knew from having worked for the Forest Service. And always telling us these stories about the people and about what happened. And Jeanne really glommed onto those stories, being history-minded, and she pushed Alden to write his book, Portal to Paradise, because she said, Alden, nobody else is going to ever write them, and they're going to be forgotten. And besides, Alden was a great storyteller. So, poor man, to the end of his days, he was writing on that book with his wife, Karen, helping him and editing it. And so the book is there for you to see. But I must say this about the book. It isn't quite like his telling it in person. That was great. Okay, the next one, Library for Kids. Jeanne was a supporter of Library for Kids, and she gave programs for us now and again, and this is a program I remember. She had returned from Russia, and she decided to have the kids do something decorating eggs like they do in Russia. So she brought all these plastic eggs and stuff, and we found out we were 1 egg short. Too many kids. So we sent a runner over to the cafe. Help, help, help. So they boiled up an egg, maybe 2 in case of disaster, and dashed them back over to us. And by the time Jeanne had finished her presentation, we had eggs for everybody. And we decorated them. And I always thought it was like a page out of one of her books. The community comes to the rescue. St. Patrick's Day. Pat Willie was born on St. Patrick's Day, and so the first year we had the parade, which is about 1981, I think, then Jeanne made a birthday cake for Pat. And after the parade, people came into the library and ate Pat's birthday cake, and that's how the refreshments got started. And every year she made Pat a birthday cake until he didn't live here anymore. Then book review. Jeanne and Alden started the book review group. And at first it was about people who were writers about Arizona. And so that was the topic, Arizona writers. But with time, it grew. And last Tuesday at book review, our heroine was a girl from Nigeria. So we've gone global on the book reviews. EMT. Jeanne was a firefighter and an EMT. And I can remember if we went on a call, and it was Renee and me and Jeanne and Bob that happened to go, we kind of moved to what we were more comfortable with. I was the one who wrote down the first care form. Jeanne was the comforter. Renee was the one that put the splints on and tied them onto the backboard. And Bob ran the radio and drove the ambulance. And then, thank goodness, we got more people to help us. Chauncey Park. Now, I know this to be true because I was standing in the library the day this happened. There were lots of lumpity-bumpity trip-you-up rocks in the driveway as you drove up to the post office. And we got tired of those, so the community gathered together, and we dug those rocks up, and some dirt came with them, and it was pitched off out there. And then somebody kind of smooshed it into an oval, and Bert Chauncey was in the library. He was complaining about that. And he said, "That looks like a cemetery out there." And Jeanne went over and put her arm around him and said, "Oh, Bert, you lovable old curmudgeon. We're going to make a park there and name it for you." And we did. And before Bert died, he even sent a plant to put in that park. He was really quite delighted. And Jeanne watered those plants for years and years. The Historical Society. Jeanne belonged to the Cochise County Historical Society. In fact, she was even president of it at one time. And she said, "Well, Portal has a lot of history. We need our own." So she got Debbie Galloway, one of the Bird Girls, to help her, and they started the Historical Society at Portal. Jeanne is not just a local person. She is a lady of the world. She lived in Germany for a while. She lived in England for a while. She traveled in Europe. She went to Russia and wrote a story with a Russian background. She went to Brazil and wrote a story with a Brazilian background. And on a former birthday, Jerry Harnbrode and Pi have known Jeanne from the days of Adam. Jerry wrote this about Jeanne years ago, and it's things you didn't know about her, and I didn't, and I want you to know them. She's written 69 books, and 40 of those were written here. Her book, Cave Dreamers, made the New York Times bestseller list in 1983. And she was interviewed on the Today Show. She's been awarded 4 Spurs for Most Outstanding Western Historical Novel and a Lifetime Achievement Award for her body of work by the Western Writers of America. She was on the National Board of Defenders of Wildlife. Probably because dogs were part of it. And she attended many meetings in Washington, D.C. She has mentored many writers in the Portal area and beyond, and read hundreds of their manuscripts. The seeds of her mentoring have spread farther than she will ever know. And Jerry was one of her mentees, and Jerry published a book, and Pi is in process of trying to get her second book published. Jeanne has been awarded the Portal Living Treasure Award, and she is.
Thanks, Delane. That's a trip down memory lane for those of you that have been here forever. Well, for those of you that are relatively new, didn't that fill in a lot of gaps as to how things started and took place? That was just wonderful. But now, Jeanne, it's your turn to tell about your friend Delane. And we're all ears.
Hard to get up these days. That song, and thank you, it was beautiful. I'm glad I got to hear it now. But that was also, okay, thank you. It was also played at Pi and Jeanne's wedding, and they're here today from Tucson. So it was wonderful for all of us. Well, Delane, those of you who have decorated this room and the library on the hundreds, I mean that, occasions that she has done the decorating with pizzazz and ta-da, you know that she is very meticulous. You might even say fussy. So, you'll be surprised to know that she calls her life happenstance. What she means is that every time anything, thank you, anything that looked exciting or adventurous or like fun appeared, she grabbed it. So, as a farm girl growing up in West Texas, several teachers who had gone to faraway places opened the doors to that country, to her, to those countries. And when she graduated from Texas Tech, she taught in several Texas schools, but when she was 25, the magic age for teaching overseas in Army schools, she saw an application, would you like to teach in Germany? That sounded fun and adventurous. She applied. The man reading her application scanned it, and then he said, oh, you're an Aries. That means you are energetic, adventurous, and what else was it? Anyway, he said, pack your bags. So she taught in Bavaria for 4 years in the shadow of the Alps. And then she transferred to Japan. But while she was in Bavaria, and that is a very picturesque country by itself, but she hit all the European countries except what was Russia and the countries they were occupying at the time. She went to Israel, she went to Spain, and the road to Morocco. She traveled around the Mediterranean. She went just about everywhere. Then she went to Japan, and wouldn't you know that she wound up on the mountaintop where the emperor had cut off the top of the mountain to build his very own private airstrip. And the women's BOQ, she was a second lieutenant, and you may salute, she had that rank for pay purposes. But anyway, the school was also on top of the mountain. And that was handy for the families and the teachers. And there was one Quonset hut that hung over the edge of the cliff where it had been shaved away. You could look down and see the life of the streets below. You could see the vendors, the storytellers, the people with their umbrellas like brilliant flowers. It was a fun way to visit the streets. She, from there, went to the Philippines, she went to India, Syria, places that were all too soon going to make news, like Vietnam and Cambodia. And she went to Malaysia, Thailand, Burma. She went just about everywhere, and she certainly exercised her travel lust. In Japan, she learned the tea ceremony and flower arranging, and she brought back some beautiful kimonos, and you may remember the dance she made up about the cherry blossom. Beautiful. And I was surprised to hear that that was an original composition. If Delane doesn't like the way something is, she will change it. So, after her tours and travel, she went back to the United States. And her first school there was in Hobbs, New Mexico. It was a black school with children, I think 3rd grade or 1st grade.
2nd.
Either one. Okay, I was close. She told them they were going to tour a traveling exhibit of the northern cultures of the Native Americans. And she said, now I want you each to find 10 things that you want to know about and ask intelligent questions of the curators, and you must be very courteous. That is my expectation. Well, you don't want to not live up to Delane's expectations, or you will be sorry. So those little kids climbed on this semi-trailer truck at one end and progressed down looking at all these great things, went out the other door after asking their questions, and when they left, the curator said that was the very best class they had ever had. Then her next school was, and this was pre-first.
Yes.
Pre-first at Santo Domingo, Pueblo. There, the children must have caught her creativity because they put rubber pads and things over the drain and made a swimming pool out of their shower and splashed happily. But then, as now, Arizona does not pay well, and Delane was lured by hard cash and went to California. There she met Renee. She taught his daughters in school, and later on, after his wife had passed away, I'm terrible. They married, and it was time to retire, and this was 1975. Renee was a great birder, and I didn't know that till we started collecting information on each other. You can know people all your lives and not know something, and that's one thing I didn't know, that Renee had been a birder from his youth up. And so he said, how would you like to live in Arizona? Well, that sounded adventurous and fun, so of course Delane was up for it. And they were driving through and came up from Douglas, and they came past the Portal turnoff. And Renee said, I've heard about Portal from other birders. Let's go have a look. That was fateful. They came, they looked, and Delane looked at the opening arms of the canyon, and the snow was on the mountains. and she said, "This is the place." And she made it her place in many, many ways. Apart from with Renee building the very first solar house in the area. That took you 3 years? Well, they were barely ensconced in, I guess you'd been in your house maybe a year when we came. And I got an inkling of what Delane was, essentially, with a neighbor that we had. Bob and I rented what is now the Downer property, and next door to us lived this little old lady who was a lot younger than we are now. But she could no longer drive, and so I was picking up her mail and taking her in a little food now and, well, every day. Well, you can't lie, can you? I mean, yeah, you can, sure, in a good cause. But I did take Edna stuff. And when Delane heard about this, other ladies started bringing in food too. But Delane was the one who knew what Edna really needed. She took food, tablecloth, nice settings, pizzazz there, and she and Renee, and they went down to Edna's a couple times a week and would have sit down, make the table pretty. Delane always sets a beautiful table. I shove my stuff to one side and my guests have to sit on one end, as any of you there know. But they would visit with Edna and she would eat while they were there. Otherwise, her fridge filled with food uneaten because she didn't like to eat alone. So Delane knew that what she really needed was company. She needed human contact. So Delane gave of herself in that way, and she did in many other ways. One thing she did, where is that card? What happened to it? Delane, her creativity came out in many ways, but one beautiful way was she made the posters always for Library for Kids. Brilliant. Anyway, she made fabulous posters, and she made beautiful cards for everybody on their birthday. And sometimes for a special occasion, like a wedding or a welcome home or something, she'd make a really big one, a huge thing. And so her cards were works of art. And my husband always told her she should open a card line, but she never did that. But Delane and Renee went to the first EMT class in 1980, and within a few years, things had dwindled. The rodeo kept going. Ramon and Izzy and some of the others kept their group active, but in Portal, they were the last one standing. And so it was obvious we needed some more people. And so we had another class, and so that was when Bob and I both became EMTs. The fire department wasn't formed for a few more years, and then again we learned shake and bake and that kind of thing. If you can imagine Delane and me charging around in our yellow jackets and our hats, but we did. Believe it or not. So we went on a lot of calls together, and we did a lot of vehicle checks together. And let me tell you, you haven't done a vehicle check till you've done it with her. You count every dead, burned Band-Aid. And if it's not there, you go to town and get one. not really. But you knew you had a vehicle check, and it had to be left clean and ready for the next user, which is still a very good example. Then, what really though, Delane went hiking with us, and Renee would get her out to the car with a package of apple slices or carrots or something to be sure she had a snack. He took very good care of Delane. They were a wonderful couple and contributed so much to this community. But she was in the hiking group and in the writing group, which has published 4 collections, and she had some wonderful poetry and articles in those collections, and I think they may have some down in the library. Then she was always in our reading group, a faithful and committed member, and still is to this day. She, of course, has been a mainstay of So What all these years, and so she has been, you might say, active. But what I think really shows Delane and what she did for the community and future generations was Library for Kids, for which she received a state she got a state award for that, for the most creative children's library activity, and they gave her some money which she plowed back into supplies. Oh, I should say, she was uniquely equipped to do Library for Kids. Not only had she traveled widely and brought back wonderful stuff, but she also had kept boxes and boxes of her teaching materials, which were creative, full of pizzazz and ta-da, and she would get these out to use for Library for Kids, but she also got them out for So What, for many occasions. Do you have any left?
Boxes.
Boxes.
Yes.
And they were all, as you again would expect, neatly identified in the big garage that she and Renee had built. So, unlike some of us who can't find anything. But she just had all this experience, all these adventures, and she made this a community endeavor. It began because, again, Delane saw what some lonely people needed. In this case, children. There were some little waif-like kids hanging around the store, and they didn't have anything to do, and their parents didn't know where they were and probably were glad they were gone. And so Delane and Sandy Hayes started a Library for Kids, and they took 3 to 12-year-olds, and they would meet. It'd run for that month, and the kids would get, every week, they would meet and have a program done by some presenter, and I'll tell you about some programs in a minute. But they would have the program, and the presenter might stay and help with the activity, but there was always some creative activity, and usually resulted in something the children could take home. All kinds of stuff, sashes, masks. I don't begin to remember all the things. The parents were so intrigued that they wanted to come, but Delane finally had to borrow them because they got in the way, and so then only the children were allowed in. And then after the activity, they would have a healthy snack of some kind, and then check out books. So the kids had a really wonderful day and took home books to read and got in the habit of reading. And so this was truly a community building, binding, and also a gift to the future in the form of these kids. And just imagine how grateful the teachers of these kids were, because when they graduated from Delane's library for kids, they knew to sit still and behave during someone giving a talk. They knew how to sit at a table and do some work quietly and not fight over the crayons. She taught them basic classroom behavior. That's what you get for not teaching kindergarten. But she did here. She had those children, and a couple of the programs that she put on. And remember, there were 28 years worth of these programs. And many people helped. When Jerry Hernrode retired, she was a very good helper to Delane and would help get the kids all done through. And other people helped from time to time. And usually the presenter helped under threats, warnings, lash, but anyhow, a couple of the special programs, Barney brought his snakes, of course, and he is still using his snakes to educate and teach children that snakes are pretty good guys after all. Then there was Finn Richards, who made these wonderful biscuits in a cast iron Dutch oven. Oh boy, the kids really love that kind of food teaching. And then Helen Snyder had a very interesting experience. She had rounded up a falconer friend who was going to come give a program. Well, the falcon took off that morning and didn't come home. So Helen said to Delane, "Don't worry, there are some Cooper's hawks nesting up at Mary Willie's. We'll go up there and we'll get the little babies down and I'll band them. I need to do that anyway, and the children will get to see them up close and personal, and then they'll be restored to their nest." Helen always knows where birds are nesting and has rescued many that fell to the ground. So they went up to Mary Willie's, and Tony Snell climbed up the ladder, brought down the little guys, and Helen banded them, and the children got to admire and enjoy meeting them. So that was one of the extra special things. So that was a defining thing that Delane did here. Oh, and Rich Winkler was in that class, and do you remember that? Now CEO of the Malpie Group. I wonder if seeing those little hawks had anything to do with that. Anyway, it educated a whole bunch of children over that 28-year period. Many of them, of course, have gone away to seek their fortune and adventure in the outside world, but we're grateful for the ones who have stayed with us. Then Delane has been always ready to help and sustain those who needed it. That came through in our EMT days, and it continued to be true even up to this day. And so we have had a long time together, and my friend, my congregant in arms, I respect, love, and salute you.
Delane, Jeannie, many people may be thinking you two better not die soon because we settled everything there is to say. Guess what? I can't think of any two people in Portal. There are 30 more stories about each of them. So you're in no hurry, you know, stick around for a while, but we didn't want to have a story. When Delane was doing Library for Kids, years went on, she recruited me to help her out, and I took it over. And I ran Library for Kids until essentially we ran out of kids. Because that was about what was happening in Portland. But sometimes we did it together. And when I was in front of the room with the kids were sitting in the chairs, standing on the chairs, running around the room, standing on their heads, whatever. But when Delane got up to talk to the kids, they sat down. They didn't just sit down, she even had a way that they had to sit. And it was called Japanese hands?
Quiet hands.
Japanese hands. There was a way they had to actually put their hands there. Well, they would come over to me after it was over and say, "This is not Japan. This is America." Okay, her Japanese hands. It was during that time that Delane told the kids and me that when she was in Japan, they had a custom. People who were elderly but contributed to the culture of Japan, artists, poems, authors, sculptors, were given an award called Living Treasure Awards. It came from Japan. So actually, it was Delane who not only got the first Living Treasure Award, it was her idea. Now, when she told me that, I'm sure she didn't expect to be the very first Living Treasure Award person. But of course, as soon as she said it, it obviously it made tremendous sense. And who better to be #1 and #2. So come up and take a look at that if you haven't seen it before, because now you know the original. As far as I know, these are the only 2 living treasures in the entire United States of America.